The other night, I caught myself doing something super small, but it was also super revealing. I was about to say something to my wife, just a random thought. It wasn't anything offensive, not dramatic, nothing, just a random thought, and I stopped. Because in that split second, I thought to myself, what if this sounds weird? What if it comes across as strange? And I caught myself doing that, and I really had to think about what I had just done. This is the person that makes me feel the most comfortable with who I am in the whole world. She knows me, she supports me, and she's not judging me and my personality. And still, I filtered myself. And that really bothered me because if I hesitate with her, how many times am I shrinking everywhere else and in everyday situations, in business conversations, on sales calls, at the gym, with strangers? And that's what this episode is all about, and it's social overthinking. So be honest. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and immediately started grading yourself with things like, was it good enough? Did I sound confident? Did I talk too much? Did I say enough? Did that land? Did I sell that well? Or maybe it's not even something you said and it's something smaller, like your laugh. And later that night you think to yourself, why did I laugh like that? That sounded super weird. Did I try too hard? Nobody corrected you. Nobody reacted negatively, but the brain told yourself that the conversation was still going on. Your brain goes into audit mode. You leave the room, but the conversation doesn't leave you alone. So you need to pause right here. Think about the last interaction you replayed. Who was it with? What are you still holding on to with that interaction? Did anything actually go wrong, or did your brain just decide that it might have? So let's break it down in business terms real quick. You get off a sales call, and immediately your brain says, did I talk too fast? Did I pause too long? Did I lose them there? Was I confident enough? Notice something. Instead of focusing on, did I serve them well? Did I ask good questions? Did I communicate clearly? You focus on your little micro behaviors, because the brain believes that if I analyze this enough, I can guarantee the outcome. But you can't engineer that certainty in human interaction. Let me ask you this. How many opportunities have you delayed mentally because you were still replaying the last one? How many conversations have you entered tense because you are still grading yourself from yesterday? How many times do you catch yourself doing this? Overanalyzing steals momentum, and momentum compounds. Overanalyzing interactions is not reflection. Reflection is calm and forward-based, and overanalyzing is self-surveillance. It's grading your tone, your gestures, your pauses, and your expressions. And for me, a big one is my laugh. I laugh and I'll later think that sounded off, or that was awkward. Why did I laugh there? Not because anyone said anything to me, but because I'm dissecting the whole thing like it's evidence. Why? Because I want to present my best version of myself to whoever I'm talking to. But here's the truth. When you're constantly trying to sell yourself, you're afraid the unfiltered version is not enough. And that fear creates performance, and performance creates exhaustion. In the year 2000, psychologist Thomas Gilovich ran what's known as the Spotlight Effect study. Participants wore what they believed was an embarrassing t-shirt into a room full of people. They guessed about 50% of the people in that room noticed. And once they got back and they took down the numbers, here's the crazy thing that they realized, and the real number and real percentage of people that actually noticed. It was only around 20 to 23%. So we estimate how much people are paying attention to us way too much. We way overestimate it. Research also shows that people forget others' minor social mistakes quickly. Small, awkward laughs, tiny tone shifts, minor phrasing errors, they don't linger. but we carry them in our own minds like proof that they do. But I want you to ask yourself this honestly. If they've already moved on, why are you still carrying it? How much time have you spent replaying conversations this month? Hours, minutes, days, maybe even weeks. What could you use that energy and build towards instead? I've done this a ton and I've really had to shift my mentality on this. But when I used to go to the gym, I walked in there feeling like everything I did was being evaluated. Every single step, every single movement, every single exercise. I felt like it was under a microscope. But then I asked myself this one day, and it was, what do I remember about the guy next to me last week? And there was no questions, there was no real details other than the fact that, okay, maybe that guy was jacked. But I wasn't paying attention to what he was doing. I wasn't looking at what he was wearing. I was focused on my own sets and my own reps and my own exercises. And I think we do that a lot. But often, if you really look at it, we are focused on ourselves while whoever we think is focused on us is actually focused on themselves as well. And now I'm going to move this into maybe another area, and it's just a social group. Maybe you tell a story in a group. Maybe it's friends or colleagues or just anybody. It gets maybe a neutral reaction. There wasn't a lot of good, there wasn't a lot of bad. But your brain says, that didn't land. It didn't work. So what happens next? You start to shrink. You speak less. And you hold back your next thought, even though the group and the room didn't reject you. But you're in your own head so much that you're thinking that they rejected you before they even had a chance to say anything. And based on that, how many times have you actually disqualified your own presence without evidence from other people? And sometimes this isn't even about tone. It's about approval. At some point in your life, maybe you learned that being fully yourself might cost you something, and it might not be good. I remember saying something in a group growing up that didn't land the way I expected. I was in elementary school. I had a group of friends. I went to a school where there was no soccer and all my friends played football. And I made some comment that I thought was funny about football versus soccer, and it didn't land. But it wasn't that dramatic either. But I remember the internal heat and the internal conflict that I had because of that. And the first thought that came to my head was, crap, I better not say that again. And honestly, probably nobody else in that group even remembers what I said. And the thing is that I still do. And I'm sure a lot of us have those types of experiences that realistically, people probably don't remember what we said, but we do. And that's a big part of how we overthink. Years later, our brain makes a quiet rule of you need to monitor yourself. And now I'm still running on that software, and maybe you are too. But I want you to pause and ask yourself, when did you first start filtering yourself? Do you still need that protection today? Or are you defending against ghosts that aren't there? Approval is external, while alignment is internal. And which one are you really chasing? Now I want you to picture two people. One, the overthinker, and two, the steady person. The overthinker leaves the room and replays everything. The steady person leaves the room and thinks, that went fine, or I'll say that better next time. And then they move on. They think about it fast, and then they move on. Over the course of 5 years, who's going to build more momentum? Who wastes less mental energy? Which one have you been? And which one do you want to become? I've often found myself being that overthinker, and later in life, I shift and I find myself realizing that none of that was important at all. But I want you to be careful when you're labeling yourself. I don't want you to look at yourself and just say, oh, I'm just an overthinker. Because identity protects your habits. And so what if instead of saying, I'm just an overthinker, you shifted and you said, I'm someone learning to trust myself socially. That's going to change everything. Maybe you are overthinking things, but from shifting from I'm just an overthinker to I'm someone learning to trust myself socially, there's a big difference. If we get caught in the mental trap of I'm just this, then no matter what happens, we almost use it as a crutch or as an excuse. I don't know how many times I've heard somebody say, "Oh, I just have anxiety," or it's not in my genetics. I just can't run, or I just can't work out. It doesn't work. And they're limiting themselves, and they've said that so much that their minds have actually shifted from I could do this to I can't anymore. And it's that same type of thing. So shift that thinking from I'm just an overthinker to I'm someone learning. It's going to change everything. So now I want you guys to take a minute and think about a situation or think about a time that you were running through a replay in your mind. And I want you to aim. What that means. A is for acknowledge. What do you actually remember about the other person? Usually it's very little. You're probably not going to remember the way they talked or handled themselves unless it was way over the top extreme. But 99% of the time, you're not going to remember that. So, A is for acknowledge. What do you remember about the other person in the situation? I is for identify. What did you do well? What did I do well? Train your brain to record the wins versus recording the losses. And M is for map. What's one thing from the conversation or discussion that you can refine for the next time? You don't need to focus on the 100 different things because you're never going to be able to break down all 100 at the same time. You need to focus on one thing to refine, and it's not punishment, it's refinement. Are you refining yourself or are you attacking yourself? Because there's a big difference. It could be, okay, maybe I said this and I need to adjust my wording so that it sounds more like this. Versus, why did I say that? That was stupid. I shouldn't have done that. And you're just knocking yourself down versus shifting, refining, and building yourself up to that next step or the next conversation. And I've found myself doing this a lot, and this AIM tactic has helped me a ton. I often find myself thinking about conversations that I could have had. Maybe it's with a client or a potential customer or a friend, where before I really broke down and kind of discovered this AIM process, it was, okay, I was talking to them about sports. Let's use sports as an example. Or I've been a youth soccer coach for 6 years now, and it's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot, taught a lot, met a lot of great people. But my first year as a coach, and even up until now, there's times where I'm talking with a player on the team, and maybe I said, okay, why did you do this? You shouldn't have done that. Pass the ball instead. Stop dribbling. Or, why didn't you dribble? Or, why didn't you shoot? And I'm attacking them. And then afterwards, I find myself freaking out about, okay, maybe I shouldn't have done this. Why did I do that? That was stupid. That was dumb. And then it wears me down because I've thought of 100 different things that I should have said in a different way. and I just end up falling into the same pit and doing it all over again. But once I break it down, I look at it, and you can take a play step by step. So first, I acknowledge, what do I actually remember about the person? The only thing I remember is that they didn't shoot the ball. Do I remember why they didn't shoot the ball? Probably not. Do I remember where they were and where the other players on the field were? Probably not. They probably saw something that I didn't see, and that's okay. Then I identify the situation. What did I do well? Okay, I recognize that maybe I would have shot the ball, or maybe I would have played this pass. So then, after recognizing that, I map it out and I refine it for next time. Instead of saying, why didn't you do this? You shouldn't have done this. It's, okay, why did you do this? Okay, you didn't think there was a shot open. So instead of dribbling, maybe next time let's try and pass. Or just take the shot because we can't score if we don't shoot the ball. And it breaks it down into super simple steps that you are able to refine and work on for the next play. And that can come physically as well as mentally. If you are running in a race and it's a mile long, a lot of the times you're really not supposed to sprint when you first start your mile run. But until you've done it, maybe you think, okay, I can do this. It's not that bad. If I sprint, I'll get ahead of everybody. And a lot of us have been there at some point in our life. We start too fast and we burn out way too quick. And then afterwards, we get after ourselves. Why did I do that? Why did I sprint so early? Why did I go faster than I've paced myself to do? And you think about the situation, and then it's like, well, they probably think I'm stupid, because then by the second lap, everyone was passing me, everyone was going, I could barely even breathe, I was huffing, I was puffing, and they probably thought I was so stupid and so dumb. And then we think, okay, next time I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to do this, because I should have done it this way, and this way, and this way, and this way, and this way. But then if you break that down into the aim process, what do I remember about everybody else? The only thing I remember is that I took off in front of them and then people passed me. Do I remember what color shoes they had on? Probably not. Do I remember how hard everybody else was breathing? Probably not. Do I remember how fast everybody else finished the race? Probably not. Okay, what's one thing that I did well? Maybe it's you finished the race even though you had to walk through the finish line. Or it's you kept jogging even though you felt exhausted. Train your brain to record those wins. And then you take the mistakes that you made, map them out, and find one to refine for the next time. Okay, I took off way too fast. So next time I'm going to start even slower than I thought so that I can end faster. And it's going to build up over time, and it's just going to keep compounding, and you'll find those wins. And if you take aim and take the aim system into thinking about these different things, it's very easy to acknowledge, identify, and map. 3 steps, super simple, and pick one thing to work on for next time, not 100. So real quickly, let's slow this down. Picture the perfect version of you who walks into the room without bracing, who laughs naturally and doesn't audit later, who says what they mean and lets it land however it lands. That version isn't perfect. They still miss sometimes, but they don't collapse afterwards, and there's the difference. They don't build a courtroom of judges in their own head. They take it and they move forward. They move forward with steadiness and a calm confidence. The world does not need a hyper-calculated version of you. It doesn't need the filtered you. It doesn't need the flawless you. The world does not need the perfect you. It needs the real you, still trying, still refining, still showing up imperfect but aligned, still chasing their goals, still chasing their dreams. Stop replaying, start aiming, and remember, the world doesn't need the perfect you, it needs the real you still trying.